Good evening. An hour late here. This is probably about the second, maybe third time this has happened, but I've been on a pretty late schedule this afternoon. I'd been up for about 30 or 36 hours, so I decided to take a nap, and you know what happened after that. So anyway, I'm back on, and you can see some alticumulus there. Let me see if I can, I don't know if I can run that. No, I don't think I can, but kind of a watery look to that cloud layer that was up at about 10,000 feet. And as you all might have guessed, I was out at the ASOS unit, and I'm just now finishing rendering, and here we go. Let me see if I can run that video. Got a different video clip. That's Tom J's clip from Las Cruces. Let me fix that real quick and point it towards the real clip. I'm coming up a little bit late here, but I've got the video. Let me switch that over real quick. Hang on just a second here. Q. Okay, I'm showing it rendered, but I don't have the file here in Vegas, so I'm going to go ahead and continue with part of the webcast here. This is what happens when we come up late. So let me switch over to our charts, and here we go. We will get back on track, and we see something here we haven't seen in quite a while, and that's cold temperatures in northwest Canada. And we know what happens when we get that. Cold outbreaks into the northern U.S., and that always has a potential for moving down into the southern plains if that's dry enough and moist enough. So we'll keep an eye on that for the next week or two. And since we started late, we get a chance here to look at the high temperatures for today. 80s once again for Texas and the south right there. And we see some of those 80s spreading out to the east coast here. Have 87 there at Fayetteville, 87 in Columbia. And that's probably about as warm as I find in the southeast U.S. In Texas, 90 degrees right there at, I think, Eagle Pass right there. And 93 at Phoenix. So we are changing seasons here. And here's the 250 millibar chart. So this is going to be up about 34,000 feet. This gives us a look at the polar front jet, and we see that about where it was yesterday, from Oregon up to the northern tier states into the Great Lakes. Here in Texas, maybe a bit of the subtropical jet. See that right there? 50 knots right there at Dodge City, 50 at Kansas City. And that distinct anticyclonic flow that's associated with the polar front jet. Now, one other indicator that we can use is if we find a very strong drop-off in wind speed over Kansas. So do we have that? Yep. Veered around to the northwest, and we have 25 to 30 knots right there. And let me just babysit this Vegas and make sure it generated the file. I find that awfully suspect. It rendered and nothing developed. So we see that. Vid temp special. Now I'm checking if we have that on the player here. So this is what I have to do to bring clips up, and I think it might have worked this time. And there we go. So we'll just resize that, and I think we are up and running. So I was out at the ASOS station in Palestine, and we see the southerly winds in place there. And this is the automated weather observation system serving as ASOS there. And this is kind of a scaled down unit from what we usually see, and you can hear we've got a bit of a thunderstorm here. Anyway, in the foreground, a little bit on the left, you can see the temperature sensor. Here's the salometer. So this is basically a laser unit pointing directly up. There's the visibility sensor. And I was trying to check and see which one the precipitation type indicator was, and I'm not sure we have that installed, but you see a precipitation sensor right there, that little unit at the very top. I'm going to run this through one more time because I promised to show what this system sounds like, and on these close-up shots you can hear the unit, and I'm going to be quiet when that's going so you can hear it. Okay, there you go. I figured you all deserve to hear a little bit of the close-up sounds of the system, so there we go. And it's just going to loop here. I'm going to try to bring a little bit more detailed presentation of that tomorrow, because I didn't get a chance to research some of these pieces of equipment due to the big rush. But I think I hit the key components there of that ASOS system, and that's the one that is reporting the conditions every 20 minutes. And let me bring up the actual observations so you can see what that system was reporting at the time I visited that unit. Okay. And here's the actual observations right there. I was at the unit right around this time right here, so you can see what that unit looks like, reporting southerly winds at 4 knots there. Ceiling 700 overcast. We have temperature of 68 and dew point of 68, and altimeter 3008, 30.08 inches. So there we go. And I'm going to go and look over the footage a little bit later, and we will look at ASOS again tomorrow. So I hope that was interesting. Back to the charts. So at 500 millibars, we have a ridge over Texas, and we see that right there. And very light winds aloft there, 5 knots at Oklahoma City, 10 at Dallas-Fort Worth. So this is not very conducive to storm organization. The only help we're getting is maybe this 20 to 30 knot flow aloft right there. 700 millibar flow is going to be up at 10,000 feet or so, roughly. And this is the depiction. We see the jet up to the north and over the Great Lakes. And again, very light winds in Texas and Oklahoma. And then at 8:50, this is just kind of a quick look at things. We can see the low-level jet not in place here. So even though we have storms, not much of a chance of those going severe here. Do we have any fronts? Well, the first thing we can look at is the isotherms, and those are going to be the dashed lines. You'll notice they kind of bunch up here in Minnesota. You go from 9 degrees at Omaha up to -6 in International Falls. That's a pretty good temperature contrast compared to Omaha to Oklahoma City. So that's going to put the front up in this area right here. And I can see one segment up in the northeast U.S. right up here, the northwesterly winds. So I'm probably going to go something like this, and we have to keep in mind in the Rockies we're intersecting the ground. So we're going to look at the thickness chart to kind of work that out later, but we see 10 Celsius, that's about 50 degrees, and we have 63 right there at Salt Lake City. Again, close to the ground, but this is probably indicating a warm air mass in place there. So that's how you can go about using the 850 millibar chart. And just one thing I noticed here, look at this. Looks like a new cold front coming out of Canada. So this is the 850 front, and it's looking like that this evening. So -21, -20 up in the Northwest Territories there. And here's a quick look at the thickness. And again, this is kind of an average temperature through the column. And again, we see a lot of that thickness packing from the Dakotas northward. So that's going to put the warm front probably in that trough right there, from Des Moines up to Rapid City. And then we have the front extending down into Nevada and then through Southern California like that. Now we have seen the polar air masses from the Pacific kind of sliding northeast. So I'm kind of expecting that to possibly happen again. And there's the other front out in the Atlantic right there. So from about Norfolk into about Knoxville. So why is this important to the central and southern plains? Well, we can see the Gulf is open. We've got a couple of pressure lines extending out over the Texas coast. So this is kind of where our air mass source region is here in Texas, Oklahoma up to Kansas. And then we are probably looking for a dry line out in this region right here. Okay, so what we're doing is we're just kind of waiting for the next system to approach, and when that happens, the winds aloft will pick up, and we'll see that on the upper air chart. Okay, so the sounding from about 2 hours ago, looking at Fort Worth right here, looks kind of tropical. So we see a lot of little bit of moisture through the column, actually a little bit of dry air right here, but above that it looks like our radiosonde has gone through a elevated layer, probably the back of some of those thunderstorms across the DFW area. So the sounding is a little bit contaminated there. And we see at 500 millibars, winds are out of the southwest. That's probably being influenced by some of those storms there. So we can check out Shreveport. I don't think they've had any thunderstorm activity there. That definitely looks tropical here. We don't see any cap. We see a little bit of shallow moisture at the surface and then dry air aloft. So maybe not so much tropical, but we do have a conspicuous absence of that cap. And then we'll check out Del Rio here. Again, not a whole lot of capping here. We do have the moisture in place, so you can see the average mixing ratio is about 12 grams per kilogram, kind of like that right there. So if we try to lift this parcel with a high temperature of about 92 or about 90, it's going to look like this. And I always construct this on my own. I don't look at the pre-plotted one, because what I'm doing is I'm kind of modifying it for afternoon heating. Now, Del Rio has hit the high for today. We've got to keep that in mind. They're showing about 82 right now. But at the time of peak heating, we were looking at something like that. So pretty good cape through that layer. And not much convective inhibition. So that's kind of ripe for thunderstorm development. So you can see we've had a few showers around the area just to the east, out around San Antonio. The bulk of the showers that we're getting are from about Waco up to Dallas and back towards Tyler, so in that area right there. Okay, about dynamics. We know that the bulk of the dynamics are well up to the north. So here's one very good shortwave, kind of a major shortwave, and you see the majority of the lift out over Montana and northern Wyoming. And here's another little area of a little bit of a shortwave trough. This is probably more of a jet streak, so kind of a channeled appearance to that flow right there. Stronger winds up in upstate New York and New England. And the ridge across Texas, there it is. Maybe a bit of a wave moving through the flow, but not a very strong wave because the winds aloft are kind of weak. So the influence of any shortwave energy is proportionally weaker. All right, the forecast. Let's check that out, see what's going to happen over the next day. We move forward to tomorrow's webcast on Tuesday. Kind of a northwesterly flow, very light across Texas. Flow starting to pick up in the central and northern plains here with the next trough coming on shore. We're getting the height falls out in that region. And here's the appearance of some 50-knot flow at 500 millibars. So I think we're going to start seeing the appearance of a few severe storms in the central and southern plains, maybe starting, I would say, probably on Wednesday. Maybe a few isolated ones Tuesday. But here's Wednesday. We see 50-knot flow starting to approach Kansas. So we've got one little segment right here. That's a jet streak right there. And here's another jet streak with that one wave coming out of Wyoming, now moving through the Dakotas and down to Nebraska. So there's the jet streak associated with that. Wind still kind of light across Texas. And then for Thursday, again, focusing on the central plains, flow starting to pick up a little bit in Texas. And we do have to keep an eye on the subtropical jets, so that might be a factor here. We have a negative tilt trough coming in. See that right there? So there's our negative tilt trough. Most of the strong winds on the backside here. So that's an indicator of possibly a digging trough. So this may start focusing on the may have started affecting the southern plains here later in the week. Okay, about that subtropical jet, I'm going to take it up to 200 millibars and look at the heights and winds. Okay, so there we start the run for right now. Looks like we do have a little bit of 50-knot flow over Texas, maybe ventilating some of the storms a bit. And we pick up strong flow at 200 millibars as early as tomorrow. So that'll help the storms out a little bit, certainly. We just aren't going to have the flow in the low levels to support anything like tornadoes. So we can see some 65 knot flow on Wednesday, and then even stronger flow coming in for Thursday night. 65 knots right there, and the negative tilt trough bringing in 100 knot winds in Nevada. Okay, so things will definitely be picking up in the central and southern plains later in the week. All right, let's put it on the satellite photo here. This is always interesting to look at. Let me blank out some of these nighttime frames. And we'll see the thunderstorms there across Texas just before sunset here. Okay, let's see here. Checking out the chat. We got Sue M here and Ryan Toomey's waiting on delayed flights from DFW this evening. Ryan is in Florida there. So yeah, we're getting some of that here. Carl Berghoff is here and Eddie W. Sue M. Also wondering about the flight delays. Funwood Tech is here. Sue M was correct that I overslept. Mike Estwick checking in here. Michael Kochenet. VHC Media here. And Ahmed and Alexi and Carl. Got Michael Burrell, Eddie W. Mick is here. Ryan keeping track of multiple issues in Florida there. Kevin McKinney and Victor Cabot and Ron Chalfant, Ryan Myers. Victor Cabot mentioning the ASOS unit here has a phone number where you can dial in and hear the automated reading. All ASOS units have that, and if you go to airnav.com, you can usually get that phone number. But of course, if you're on the internet, you've already got the observations right there. So that's mostly for pilots that are on the ramp and don't have mobile data. They can call up and get the observation right there before they take off. Okay, Sarah Wood making it in, and Brian Harp. Mike Estwick says dropping from upper 70s to lower 50s on Saturday in Denver. Michael says that was a really close pronunciation. Is it Kochenet, or sounds kind of French there? Kochenet? I don't know, I'm taking a guess here. Damon Winslow has the aviation weather textbook. Is that from the FAA, or is that another author? That's probably going to be one of my next book projects, especially since I write the column for IFR. I'm thinking about doing an aviation weather book. I think there would certainly be a lot of interest in that. Okay, so you guys have been looking at the satellite photo, and I like bringing up the visible imagery because this allows us to see boundaries. Storm's already ongoing there, so not really any boundaries to look at, but we see the overshooting tops from about Brady, San Saba, Llano, up to the Palestine and Tyler area, producing some anvils. And I notice that they're spreading to the north. Is that what we have on the soundings? Let me take a look here. Yeah, 250 millibar chart has southwesterly winds. So we're not bringing in that northwesterly flow until probably tomorrow here. And let me show you guys something else. I don't know if you've looked at that Couchelman Vetter site. Let me bring that up here. It's a German site, and for some reason, I think that's the only site besides College DuPage that has the new GO 16 data. So there's the link for that. They've got some really good weather products on there. So I recommend checking that out. And to bring up the infrared imagery, the best way to do this if you want to get full control over your sectors, I'll show you how to do this real quick. Okay, see this drop down at the very top. This is all in German, but you go to this raster carton, and you go to what looks like North America there. So this brings up a different map than the default, and you get a lot more control over which sector you're looking at. So we're going to zoom in on the Texas area, since we have storms here. We're looking at water vapor imagery for right now. In the dark green, that indicates a lot of radiance from moisture being received by the satellite. So we're seeing the storm anvils over Texas and the Tyler area. The blue and brown, those are going to be drier areas here. Now we can switch over from water vapor, which is this Wasserdampf, that's water vapor, and we can switch over to this infrared. My German is not very good, but that's your infrared imagery. And if you want enhancement, actually this alter GOES, that's going to be the regular GOES satellite. If you want GOES 16, it's going to be these top super HDs. So top alarm is going to be your enhanced infrared. So you may be wondering why that's important at nighttime, since we got radar and all that. Well, if your radar is not working, you can use this to assess storm severity. So you would be looking for your colder cloud tops, and in a severe weather situation, you would be seeing some very localized cold cloud tops, and you'd be able to pin down exactly where that's happening. Okay, let's see here. I'm going to run the animation because that shows one feature of the GOES 16 imagery. This is GOES Next Generation Satellite, and you can see this is the 5-minute infrared, which is amazing. With the previous satellites, we were kind of stuck with 15-minute intervals. So you can see the colder cloud tops right here, and the sudden appearance of those will tell you where possible severe storms are. So that could be very helpful. I've had to use that a few times for chasers in southeastern Montana. Very poor radar coverage in that area, so a few times I've relied on this infrared imagery to kind of see what's going on. Okay, let's check out the forecast here real quick. So we're looking at the synoptic scale picture here. There's the current weather. You can see that we're dominated by high pressure over Quebec and Ontario. So we've got this ridge kind of extending down into Texas here, extending out into the Gulf, enough to bring up a little bit of a south flow from the Gulf right there. And then other areas under the influence of the actual cold air. So we're talking about Tennessee and North Carolina there. And then the other side of that, we've got the front in Nebraska like that. So this is pretty similar to what we were seeing on the other charts. So moving forward for tomorrow night's webcast, we can see that front making some headway through Utah and Nevada. Here comes our Canadian air mass coming southward. Texas and Oklahoma still under the influence of that return flow from the Gulf. Then moving forward to Wednesday for the webcast, then we see things starting to get active in Iowa and Illinois there. So we've got the cold Canadian air coming south. We've got the Gulf, probably a low-level jet in place. So we're talking about storms here for Iowa, and I think earlier we had been looking at northern Illinois. I think that's shifted a little further west. This is the time of peak heating here, so probably a few good storms here in Iowa and around Omaha. Moving forward to Thursday, we can see things shift eastward, and our front is looking like this, dropping into Oklahoma and Arkansas. There's that cold air moving south, and also the Pacific system, also not moving very far inland, but it is progressing eastward through Utah right there. And remember, our negative tilt trough is starting to take hold here. We saw that over this area. And that's there because of the northwesterly, the cold air at the surface. See that cold dome extending up into the mid-levels? That's helping to create the troughing we have in place over that area. So Pacific system starting to come into play here, linking up with the Central Plains system. So remember, we have the some good thunder there. There's a low-level flow coming up from the Gulf. And thunderstorms on Friday morning there in Oklahoma. Then by evening, we're looking at this here. And remember, the dry line is probably going to be active on that day also. We've got a little bit of downslope component here, so that's going to be important. So we may have a few dry line storms around Wichita, down to Abilene, up to the Red River. And this is a very similar pattern to April 10th of 1979. You might remember the Wichita Falls tornado. I'm not too sure we have the upper level flow to really support what's going on. It's pretty close. This is almost identical to the pattern on that day. So we're going to watch probably this area right here for severe weather. So basically from McAllister to Duncan to Wichita Falls to Abilene on Friday. Then for Saturday, things move eastward into the Mississippi River Valley. Cold air plunging southward through Texas. Do you see any return flow from the Gulf? Nope, it is pretty much cleared up. A little bit of weak flow over Alabama and Mississippi, and it's kind of weak there. So that's going to be a factor that may reduce the storm potential a little bit. But anyway, we're going to be focusing on western Tennessee right there up to, I think, Fort Campbell, is that right? Maybe up in the area in Kentucky. Okay, then on Sunday, things move eastward. Front clearing all of the Central Plains, a little bit of severe potential in Virginia. So now we're kind of tapping the Gulf at this point. So possibly a few thunderstorms over the Carolinas and Norfolk there, down to southern Virginia. Looks like our next Pacific system starting to come together. It's a little bit hard to see, but it is in place there over Nevada. Okay, then for a week from now, we're going to just kind of pick up things very quickly. We see the Gulf starting to open up. Looks like a system is making it through the Rockies here, so I think the dry line may be active this day. So maybe a bit of severe potential on the high plains. Then for Tuesday, Looks like a Canadian system right up there. Pacific system may be starting to, not very well organized, but it does look like it's in the Central Rockies. Then for Wednesday 26th, it looks like it's finally starting to come out of the Rockies. And possible chase potential, severe weather potential in Kansas right there. Kansas City down to Dodge City, right along that boundary right there. And maybe a little bit of upslope action in eastern Colorado right there. So we're getting about to that season where it doesn't take much moisture to get severe weather going there in the high plains. Okay, so we're about 240 hours out, so looks like a lot of cyclogenesis in the Central Plains, probably a lot of severe weather potential. You see the Gulf really tapped there. This looks to be a severe weather day, Thursday the 27th into Friday the 28th. There's our front right there, very deep fetch of moisture from the Gulf. So again, severe weather for the 28th into the 29th. And then everything moves eastward after that. And we see the next system coming into play right there, maybe some high plains action at the very end on April 3rd. So, man, we spent about 10 minutes going through the forecast weather. Hopefully I'm not boring you all with this, but this is kind of a little bit of forecast 101. So I'm showing you charts and how to put everything together to get a quick look at what's going on with thunderstorm potential and that kind of thing. So let me take a look at the chat here and get caught up. So let's see here. Where am I at? Michael Cochenet. All right. Okay. So next time I see you, I'll have that nailed down. Very good. Damon Winslow is here. Dorothy Tornado made it in. Victor Cabot mentions the aviation weather book, and that's on the FAA website. So aviation weather ACC 00. That's a book there for aviation weather flying. Ryan says Chicago O'Hare and Midway could be an issue Wednesday and Thursday. Definitely agree, especially Wednesday night. That's going to be problematic there with that warm front coming up from the south. Mike Estwick talks about why negative tilt troughs are more important. A lot of that is just pattern-based. Just whenever we see that on the charts. Let me see, where did I put that? I'm going to have to bring that up again. Give me just a second here. I'm going to break up to 500 millibar heights and vorticity. Okay, so there's that negative tilt trough right there. This is kind of a major trough, as a matter of fact. But you can see that on the backside, we've got stronger winds coming in, and that's another pattern-based recognition thing. Whenever you have stronger winds on the backside of the trough, that will tend to dig the trough and intensify it. So that's one reason these negative tilt troughs are important. If we have a positive tilt trough, those have a tendency to have the strongest winds on the other side, and those troughs will tend to lift out. So if we see that in the Central Rockies, that'll move mostly into the northern plains, and it will have a potential to weaken as it lifts out of there. Okay, so I hope that gives you a little bit of background there on that. And let's see the rest of that. If Chicago goes down for weather, for Mike Estwick, whole system goes down. Done, son. Done, son. David Holcomb, working late, 28 watching, 7 likes. Come on, guys. Yeah, come on, guys. A few likes here. That would definitely be appreciated. Mike Estwick says, not boring. Appreciate that. Lexi 2. Twister is coming on again at CMT, a movie on CMT. Is that the Music Network? CMT. I thought they played music videos mostly, but I guess here in a country in Western territory, we do see a lot of tornadoes too, so probably relevant there. Ron Chalfant says forecasts are interesting to watch. Carl Berghoff, very interesting forecast. Sue likes that too. Kevin McKinney says the forecast is perfect for getting me familiar with the way the atmosphere progresses. And Ryan says jet stream in relation of that trough digging in from the west. Yeah, jet stream on the backside here. So that'll carry most of the energy later this afternoon into the Central Plains. Maybe I can bring up the GFS here. GFS for the continental U.S. Okay, so normally we expect to see some digging with that negative tilt trough, and let's see. There it is. See that even digs to the point where it forms a vortex over Kansas there, starting about Friday. So this is a big ball of energy coming into the Central Plains. So we're going to get a lot of ageostrophic flow, and that's what produces the bulk of the weather that we see from day to day. So that'll help destabilize things and get the low-level jet going out ahead of it. And of course we've got the cold temperatures associated with that trough right there. So that's going to mean instability over this region here. And as that approaches, we get the destabilization in the mid-levels. And you see the soundings, the very middle and top, the temperature line moves to the left. And when that happens, we see capes go up. And of course, with the wind flow coming in, that means stronger shear and higher storm relative helicities. Okay, Mike, plugging Patreon. Yeah, thank you. And maybe I'll put up the... oh, I don't have a card for Patreon. I don't think I do, so I'm going to have to work on that. Maybe I can do that manually. Let me put up the Patreon card, see if I can do that. Meanwhile, you can hear the wind or the rain coming down. Okay, so there's the Patreon page, patreon.com/MetLab. If you want to throw a few bucks that way, it would definitely help. Okay, let's see what else. Let me bring up a little bit of radar before I leave you guys. That's always interesting to look at. So we're bringing up GR level 2, and there's not going to be much to look at because the storms will be a bit disorganized, but I'll bring that up really quickly. Okay, so we're coming up now, and while we're doing that, I'm going to look at the SPC analysis here. This is at, just go to spc.noaa.gov/exper. And that'll bring up the, this is basically sort of a surface analysis. It's very heavily based on the, drawing a blank here. There's a model they use. It's kind of the replacement for the RUC. And so there's a little bit of model initialization that goes into this. A lot of the fields like the upper air. This is not an analysis here. So when I'm showing you the 925 millibar conditions, that's based on these short fuse models. not radiosonde launches. So you have to keep that in mind when you're looking at the fields on this chart. If you want to get actual observations, you actually have to plot them like that right there. Or you can take that into digital atmosphere and analyze it yourself. So digital atmosphere, I'll bring that up really quickly also. So digital atmosphere, that's a program for actually working directly with the observations, and we can plot divergence and streamlines. Those can be sort of important before a severe weather outbreak. So current conditions are going to be looking like this right here. And you can see if we want to actually analyze the weather directly, we've got a bunch of links for doing that right here. So this is a field that I don't know of exists on any websites. This is potential temperature. This is basically the air temperature reduced to 1,000 millibars. So in the mountainous territory, this can help us find fronts. It definitely shows up here. See that right here? I can't emphasize using potential temperature enough when you're analyzing in the Rockies. And you can see here that really brings out the location of the front. Convergence right there in eastern Wyoming. Also, it's very hard to find normally here, but shows up excellent between northwest Colorado and southwest, or northwest Colorado and yeah, southwest Wyoming right there. And south of Salt Lake City. There's the location of the front. I'm kind of curious if we can extend that into California. Let me take a quick look, and I'll move the chart a little bit westward. I'm sure Ron Chalfant is happy about this, getting a look at his territory right there. We're going to plot potential temperature. So remember, we've got the front coming south through this area, and you can see what looks like some bad data right there. So this is one good thing about digital atmosphere. You can kind of like drag the cursor through that area and delete the offending station. So where's the bad data coming from? I don't know, but I'm going to delete it. It's possible that we've got bad elevation data here. I really don't know, but we can just wipe that out, and then we can replot the analysis. So we've got a lot of flexibility here. So now you can see the field looks a little bit better. So we can extend the front through central Nevada right there from about, I think that's Ely, down to just south of Lovelock there. And it gets difficult to kind of pick out because of the effect of the Sierra Nevadas. But usually when I see these, the San Joaquin Valley kind of cold like this, that tells me the front has kind of cleared that area. So I think we're looking at something like that right here from about Bakersfield up to Tonopah for the frontal location. Okay, so there's a little bit of extra stuff. Hopefully that helps you right there. And I'll take a quick look at the fields here. Look, this time of year we like looking at the temperature, winds, and dew point field from SPC. That's going to be right here under surface. And this will give you a quick look at where the ingredients are coming together. So the shaded areas and the blue dashed lines corresponds to your moisture. So the best moisture, I'm looking at this right here, that's going to be probably through this area here. Not much of a moisture axis right now, maybe one up in Arkansas right there. But these storms are basically just developing in the better moisture in this area, kind of a weak moisture axis right there. And up in Kansas and Oklahoma, you've got a weak moisture axis of 60s dew points extending up in that region right there. So if we're looking for thunderstorm development up in the Central Plains, we'll look at the dew point axis. Let me see if I can bring that up real quick. Okay, so you see that right there? A little bit of a moisture axis extending up into northwest Kansas, and looks like some storms along the dry line right here. So these did not quite fire along that moisture axis, and I'm not too sure why. I think maybe orographic development along the higher terrain out there near Clayton might have influenced those storms right there. But anyway, the moisture axis, the dry line, probably looking something like that for today. All right. I think I'm getting about talked out. So anyway, I appreciate you all watching, and hopefully we'll see you all tomorrow. Ron says a video on how to import digital atmosphere, how to import info into digital atmosphere would be helpful. So yeah, we'll definitely try to do that. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and let you all go. I appreciate you all watching, and we'll see you all tomorrow.